Welcome back to Heard It Here. I'm Kaylee Mason, your beef advocate and host. I have Emma Eldridge with me here today, and we are out at the beef unit because this is where she teaches the clipping class, and we did wholesale picture day. So I'm going to let her introduce herself a little bit more and then dive right into clipping class.
Yeah. Like Kaylee said, my name is Emma Eldridge. I'm the judging coach here at Colby, a former alumni. Graduated here in 23 and then went to Oklahoma State, and now I'm back. So, yeah. A little bit about kind of my background. I grew up showing livestock, so that kind of helped me get to the point where I am with clipping class.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was a class I was offered to teach, and I've loved it because that's what I grew up doing. So, yeah, we wash and blow cattle and work on getting them clipped for the sale and things like that. And then we actually had a couple of partners that helped do the torching for the bulls, for the bull sale and that contest. So a lot of cool things.
Yeah. So with the clipping, who taught you how to do that?
So actually, I grew up very fortunate. My dad's Eric Eldridge. He's the herdsman for Collier Herefords and Angus. So when I grew up, I got to work with a lot of clientele cattle and then show cattle as a junior as well. And so I got to watch him my entire life. And, in my opinion, he's probably one of the greats in terms of clipping cattle. And so I got to be very fortunate that way and just watch and learn. And so that got to me where I am today, actually.
Mm-hmm.
So pretty fortunate that way.
Yeah, that's awesome. So then you were taught it, but not only you're teaching the clipping class, you actually helped some of the beef production students learn to clip too, so we could get bulls ready for picture day.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So, I've said kind of many times that clipping's hard to learn. And I don't think it's one of those things I can tell you to take a 1/4 inch off here. You just kind of have to see livestock and be able to know, all right, if this animal's big shouldered, like that's where we need to take them off and take the most hair off and things like that. And, you're trying to make them long and level over their hip and make them flow in terms of proportionality. And so, my coaching style, my teaching style is do by seeing. And that's how I learned to clip. And I think that's how many people do learn is by trial and error. So, when I teach, I show and then I say, replicate that.
Mm-hmm.
And so then people, or our students, they then get the chance to try to do that with somebody, overseeing to be able to help them be like, here, hold your clippers like this, go at this angle. And I think that is something beneficial because that's one of the great things about our program here is everything is hands-on.
Mm-hmm.
And so you get to have that opportunity to learn by seeing, but then also by doing. And you never learn if you don't make mistakes. So
Right.
That's kind of how I roll because hair grows back. So
Luckily,
right. I mean, you can always take more off is my motto. So go a little at a time, but if you take too much, it'll grow back.
mm-hmm.
And you can always blend it out. So
Yeah.
that's kind of how I teach. And when I got to work with you guys for the torching demo, like I said, a little goes a long way and just keep whittling. And I think that's something that's very beneficial for many students to learn is that you don't always have to go, to the max. You can take a little bit off and go from there. And especially people that are more timid about it. I mean, torching can be scary for a lot of individuals that have never done it. And so just take a little bit and go from there. And it may be a longer process if you've never done it before, but at the end of the day, they're going to look good no matter what you do,
Mm-hmm.
in my opinion, as long as you take your time.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I would agree with that. So as a sophomore last year, because you weren't teaching last year,
Right.
Marty was actually the one who showed us how to torch.
Yeah.
And so between his technique and your technique, it was really cool to see the different ways that people will clip and torch.
Yeah.
And so like my partner was Mara, and we kind of intertwined both of yours and Marty's techniques.
Yeah.
And I felt so confident in it. Like afterwards, I don't know if I'll do it anymore after college. I don't know if it'll be a side thing for me, but it was definitely a learning experience and actually really cool to see like the behind the scenes because I didn't grow up showing
Right.
or judging or any of that. So it was definitely something I'll take with me. And I have a lot of respect for you for doing that because it does take a lot of patience.
No, I grew up torching bulls and stuff like that at Collier's for the sales and stuff. And, to be honest, for most of that, that's how I learned too was the men jumped in and they'd do it. And, I make shear heads and whatnot. And everybody has their own techniques. I mean, nobody clips the same. Everybody holds their clippers different. And so it's finding what you're comfortable with and then making it work from there. I mean, I don't hold my clippers the same way my father does either. And even down to shears. And so people with smaller hands, it's harder to hold a big set of shears versus a little set. And so, once you figure out what you're comfortable with and what style works for you. And so, Marty, he's a man, right? He's got larger hands than I do. And so, the way he holds a torch or a set of shears is different. Mm-hmm. And so that, for many people, like let's take Cade, for example, he's got bigger hands than I do. And so for him holding a set of shears, that's natural. And versus me, like I hold them a little different. I hold them a little more underneath so I don't drop them. And when I'm holding a torch, I hold it sideways. Some people hold it straight down. And so once you find what you're comfortable with and find that groove, then it makes it a lot easier. And especially when you have the opportunity to learn from more people, mm-hmm. you get to find different styles. I not only grew up watching my father clip, but Kyle Collier as well. And I also think, that's one of the greats. They have a very important progressive program. And so watching those two gentlemen work side by side, they'll whittle a top together at the same time. They have the same outcome. They have different styles. Mm-hmm. And so getting to see that and see what works for me and just kind of like, I always say, get off at an angle and just watch somebody work. And that's kind of always been my philosophy. If I was on the show stick and not even clipping, I was learning the entire time. Mm-hmm. So that's something I think, as a student, you were there when I was doing the demonstration and you were right there every time and you watched and learned everything I could teach you. Mm-hmm. And then you turn around and you did it and I was like, that looks great. And so, being able to take what you learned and apply it, that can be very hard at times, especially when you're clipping and torching. Excuse me. And I think that some students, it's hard to watch and do. Because a lot of students, they want to know the research on it and exactly where to go and how to do it and how much to take off. And at the end of the day, you're just trying to make them look right. Mm-hmm. And so no matter how much you take off, as long as they look like they should or like they need to, it doesn't matter how you got there. Mm-hmm. So I think it's really cool, like you said, to take two different people's perspectives and how they do things. And you and Mara, using that and doing it both ways, I think the cattle looked great come picture day. So, it works no matter which way you want to do it, right?
Yeah.
So,
well, thank you.
Yeah.
I was really impressed with our bulls, and I'm excited to see who won the clipping contest on Bull Sale Day.
Me and Natalie did walk through, and we did pick the top three. Okay. And I think those three bulls, and I'm not going to give you a sneak peek, but I think those three bulls and those individuals that worked on them cattle did a very, very incredible job. And I think, torching different colored cattle, like we talked about that day on the demo, is very different. Mm-hmm. Black cattle to red cattle to white cattle are all different in how you torch them. I get very I get scared to work on white ones because if they're pink skinned and you're torching them, it can go wrong really fast. Versus black cattle, it's a lot easier to torch on. Mm-hmm. And so I think that there will be some surprise when it comes to the revealing of that, because we definitely, it's just very different. And we kept all those scenarios open. Mm-hmm. With, does this one look good? And does it, I was very impressed by the white cattle and the red cattle and the ability of the students to get those torched. And I think that's just very incredible. And I think everybody did a due diligent job when they worked on their cattle. So I think that, correlated with how we pictured and videoed. Because if the cattle don't look right and they don't look good, they won't picture and video well. Mm-hmm. So, and I thought we had a very successful day out there in the pen.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah.
So joining us now is Keaton Fadig, and she is also one of the students. She was in the clipping class and judging class, and she was with us on Bull Sale Picture Day while Keller was here as well. So tell us about your experience with the clipping class, since that's kind of what we were just discussing.
Yeah, so clipping class, I was here first semester, so I helped break calves. We learned how to rinse them. We rinsed, we washed, and then got them blown out, got them broke. So that's a big learning curve for them, I would say. Just tying them up and being around them and getting them used to people is really important for them. So we kind of go through that. And then once they're broke to tie, then they get broke to lead, they're broke to rinse. So just good for them. And they come out super docile. They're broke. Yeah, they're gentle. They're not crazy. So that's kind of the intention of that class.
Keaton had a little black heifer, a registered black heifer, and got to work with her quite a bit and has her dog gentle for any 4-H FFA kid to hop on. And then we got to clip a little bit, not as much first semester, But I think we started a little bit and just working on one heifer. And so Keaton didn't get to be a part too much of clipping. We did that more second semester, but she definitely was the workhorse behind getting that heifer broke. And there's, when people break cattle, people do it in different ways. Some people just want to smother them and work them to death. Mm-hmm. Other people have a gentle touch. And I would say Keaton has a more gentle touch with her heifer. And I think I'm more of like a let's just go and you're going to figure it out along the way. And Keaton takes nice steps with her cattle and works them very kindly. Mm-hmm. And so that's a benefit. And her heifer, is bulletproof. And so I think, that's also another thing is everybody has a different way of, halter breaking and things like that. We talked about that. And I think, even just us having differences or, Keaton primarily grew up showing cattle and sheep. And so we break animals differently but like kind of coming together and finding a way, and what works for certain people, and just like clipping. And so that was pretty unique, like Keaton having her own way of doing things versus, me, or like even just down to washing and rinsing. People either brush them down or brush them forward or up or, all those different things. And just at the end of the day, we get the same result, but we all have different ways of doing it. And so I think that was something unique as Keaton came in with knowledge and she was able to use that. And I may have learned things from her. I didn't grow up doing like clubby cattle or steers. And so Keaton had done some of that. And so like the way she works hair is different than I do. Mm-hmm. And so I got to learn some things from her as well, because you're always learning. And so I think that was pretty unique to have a different perspective on it.
Absolutely. So then in the class, since you did have the prior experience, what did you feel like Emma was able to help you with?
Yeah, I just think like different things. Like I realized like we come from different backgrounds and see different things around like we grow up around different people and they do things differently. And so the way that I know that I need to do things at home is probably different from other people. So just like a different perspective of like other people do things differently and that's okay. And we're all working towards the same goal, especially out here. So just adopting something different. And in the back of my mind, do I want to do it my way? Yes. But can I do it someone else's way? Also yes. Mm-hmm. And then kind of, putting those two things together is good because we get a better result that way.
So then you are also in the judging class, or you are in the judging class?
She's on the judging team.
I'm on the judging team, yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So with that, do you feel like the two correlate pretty well? Like whenever you're clipping with your judging experience and all of that, you can be like, oh, I see this differently than a student may see this. And when you're out judging, you may be like, oh, I can see like where they may have messed up clipping, or oh, I really liked how they clipped that cow. Yeah. Like maybe I can try that whenever I'm clipping next, or like how do those two relate for you?
Giving me a set of clippers is not something you should ever do. However, like I do notice, I'm like, oh, they clip this one this way to accentuate something that she doesn't have or make her better when we're looking at them in motion or something like that. So I do think that they correlate. And me judging now, I know when I look at stuff, there's things I really don't like and there's things I really do like. And so I know the good and I know the bad. And so kind of just splitting those. So yeah, I think judging correlates with the clipping class. You have to see them first to be able to clip them how you want them and make them look presentable. So being able to see them first is really important. And then clipping is also really important. You can hide a lot of things when you clip things. Mm-hmm. So just doing that and making sure.
I agree with Keaton. Like once you've livestock judged or like, how to like break an animal down and really evaluate them and like what they're missing, what their holes are. And if you can clip those holes out and make them to where they look the best they possibly can, like she said, in motion, like if one's really bad hipped or too high out of their tail head, like taking those things down and making them look the way you need them to look, it's very beneficial because if you can evaluate livestock and you can clip and you can put those things together, you're going to be better off making what we would call perfect or ideal. And so I think that helps is just having the knowledge behind it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that goes back to showing them. You can see them, you can clip them, and then when you show them, you need to make sure that you only show those like desirable things of them. So when you can see them, it's a lot easier.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So then, did you know Keller before?
Yeah. So I grew up around a couple kids, and they went to college with Keller. One of them was his roommate here at Colby, and then so I knew Keller, had met him a couple times, and so I was excited to work with him in the picture pen and just kind of see how he does things. I know his personality and I know how he works, so I was like, I am interested to see how he is picturing stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So,
how do you think picture day went?
The first day of picture day, I got to be in the picture pen. I love getting ears. It was a learning curve for me because ears on bulls are different than show cattle. Show cattle, they're tame usually, or they've been tied up a couple times. These bulls have probably never been touched, so you have to work them differently than you would seal cattle in a little pen, picture pen. So, pictures went smoothly. I learned some different things, jumped on the learning curve, learned how to get bull ears and get them pictured. So that was good.
Mm-hmm.
You know, with Keller being a past alumni judging member, he commented a lot on like different cattle and, what they do well and stuff like that. Did you think that was beneficial for you as a judging student?
Some of the things he was saying, I was like, yeah, like I understand that. And I think, he's an ag comm major. And so I've been thinking about ag communications. And so, knowing that he has a judging background and then him relating that to picturing livestock, I was like, that's so important. Because if you can't see them, then you're really out of luck in the picture pen, because they might look bad and you take a picture and then that reflects on you. That's not reflecting so much, I feel, on the cattle. It's reflecting on you or whatever you're picturing. It's reflecting on you. So having a good judging background and like being able to see them, super important, because that reflects back on you and then you look better.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah.
I agree with that because, back home we talk about, when you're picturing, you picture with some friends up home, and I think, those people that can see cattle when they're taking that picture, they're like, hey, their hip doesn't look good in this picture, let's try again. And always taking that time to retry and to actually get a good picture that represents the livestock to their full potential is really important. So having a judging background and being able to evaluate and see them, like she said, is just absolutely important, because a bad picture, cattle don't sell with a bad picture, and it represents you, the picture person, horribly.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was something Keller did very well, is if we weren't going to get a good picture, we were going to try again. And if we had to, we'd bring them back.
Mm-hmm.
And we weren't going to stop until we could get a good picture that was accurate representation. And so I think that's a very important side of it, because bad pictures don't sell good livestock.
No.
Right.
And I think the accuracy is good. I mean, we all want them to look perfect and we all want them to be close to the ideal, but sometimes they're just not good enough to be close enough to the ideal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you have to just, at a point, realize that that's what you're going to get and make it the best that you can and work with what you have.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So at the end of this semester, you're teaching another class.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to talk about that? Because I am in that class.
Yeah.
But I feel like that correlates with this too, because we're supposed to be learning how to look at cattle.
Yeah. So I'll start teaching a beef cattle evaluation class. And so we'll specifically just work on cattle and evaluating them for their strengths and weaknesses and things like that. And so I think that's actually a really unique class here to go with your guys' program, because yes, we can work cattle, but at the end of the day, we're trying to make $1. And so we have to sell livestock. And so being able to evaluate them, and, you have to pick your replacements. And obviously you want your replacements to be at the top end of your operations offspring, but you also have to have offspring to market, which have to be good as well. And so I think the evaluation comes down to before the calf's ever even born, because you're trying to make those breeding decisions of, okay, this heifer or cow does this very well, but let's say she doesn't have enough power. We need to breed her to a bull that has power, but without sacrificing what she does well. And so you have to make those breeding decisions. And then 9 months, or, then you breed the heifer and hope that she conceives. And then let's say 9 months later, you're going to pop out a calf on the ground. And I think from day one, people already start evaluating those cattle and okay, this bull calf popped out. He's frail and small-footed and all these things. Most gentlemen will cut a bull calf that's not adequate at birth. Versus if you are growing bulls or growing steers, you'll take more time and evaluate those livestock and wait until, your cut date and then go from there. And so many people in different operations have different times of evaluation. Mm-hmm. And so you've got to be able to evaluate little calves as well as yearlings, 18-month-old bulls, and including females, and then market those. And so the knowledge behind it in terms of making your footnotes and marketing to what facets of the industry, your cattle best fit and things like that are really important on the backside of it. And then as well as when you pick your replacements, putting females back into your herd that are going to amplify, creating donors or all those things, because you have to have good genetics, but you also have to have a phenotypically desirable herd when those people step on your property to come look at them. And so I think it's very important to have this class, because you as cattlemen will now have the understanding and the background of what it looks like to evaluate livestock from a judging perspective, and knowing where the line is. Okay, this one's acceptable here, here, and here, but she doesn't do this well. And so we're not going to keep her, and this is why, and be able to make those decisions comfortably and not have the thought in the back of your mind of, am I making the right decision? And also, when evaluating livestock, we all have our different opinions. Keaton grew up very heavily in sheep, and, I raise some sheep, but never as heavily as she does. And so when taking one back home to raise sheep, do we have the same opinion? Probably not all the time. And so it also is what best fits your herd and your program, and what you need there versus somebody else. And that's why people buy livestock from other, industry people, because you may have something that I need, but I may not have something you need. And so trying to be able to evaluate, I need this, and this is where I need to go to get it, or I don't need this. And those are your coals, or your ones that you sell, is the things that you may not need, but somebody else does. And so, when we go to pick out something that, like a bull, for instance, that would work really well on, our set of cows, if you're buying one bull, you have to have something that can fit everything. And so it becomes more of a break it down to brass tacks of we need more, calving ease or more weaning weight in our cattle. This is the kind of bull we need. Versus if you need something that's, longer pattern, whatnot, that's more of a phenotypic deal versus genotypic. And so it just really comes down to, what do you need and how to evaluate that and go after what you need. And so I think that class will really help you guys understand the different kinds of livestock and what best would fit you, and going after that and be able to just see them the way you need to see them and what they have to offer. So
sure. So Keaton, with the class that I was just talking about, but also with your prior knowledge and you raising show cattle, was that something that you had to know a lot about too? Was evaluation and, all of the details that really go into choosing cattle, especially for showing?
Yeah, I want to preface, we keep our heifers around and AI those, so it's not huge, not crazy. But I do think you see people who are really successful, and you think about how did they become successful. And I think a lot of those people do have judging backgrounds, and they know how to see them correctly. You want to be successful, but you can't see something. I think that's going to be really tough for you to make that animal better or show it to a higher quality than what it is. And so being able to evaluate them without rose-colored glasses on, you got to be able to evaluate them soundly is really, really important. You want to be successful. I think that's the basis of what you need to do. And I didn't really realize that until I started judging in college, and I didn't think about it. But now that I slow down and I think about people who are successful, I think a lot of that has to do. And maybe they don't judge, and maybe they took one class in college and they saw some livestock and they got their ideas from there, or they rely on people before them to give them those ideas. Like my dad, he doesn't come from a judging background, but I think things he's been around, things he saw, he probably knows what a good cow is. He probably knows what a good bull is. So I don't think you necessarily have to have a solid judging background, but I do think knowing how to evaluate livestock is really important, especially not just in the show industry. That's obviously super important, but when we get out on just commercial cattle, that's really important. If you have a female that can't walk, she probably needs to head her to the sale barn, because she's not gonna, that's not good for your herd. And then say you keep a replacement female out of her, then you're probably even further, you're just digressing. So you need to make sure that you like Emma said, like know where the line is and make sure that you can evaluate them. So I think that's important in every industry.
Mhm.
Something you touched on was kind of like generational. Bad cattle reproducing, that's generational. It takes more generations to fix structure than it does to implement power and design. And so when you start at the base in terms of skeleton, and that's kind of what Keaton's talking about, like that's where the most importance is at the skeleton, and then you can do the extras from there. And so, what's going to take the less generations to fix is definitely not skeleton. And so, like she said, her father, has the right idea in terms of what the cattle need to do and how they need to be correct in terms of in motion, things like that. So, is that the line to cross? And in my opinion, we talk a lot about it, and when we're judging, structure is a big pet peeve of mine. If they can't move, they don't need to be in the top pair.
Mhm.
And so that's, something that we focus heavily on is structure. And so I think that was a great point to bring out is that, in terms of fixing cattle generationally, they need to be structurally correct. And then, like you said, you may not have to have a judging background because a lot of people over time, like, these big operations is generational. So they've learned from, the person, their predecessor before them of what these cattle need to do and where their program needs to lead. And so I think that's pretty cool that if you didn't grow up in the judging background, you probably somehow did because of your generational or the people that you surround yourself with. So I think it's pretty unique that you may not have to, be on a national champion judging team to be able to evaluate livestock, but who you surround yourself with and, the opportunities you give yourself, that can make a large difference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So like cattle producers, a lot of these older generations, they may have not have gone to college. They may have just grown up and straight took over their operation and learned from, like you said, their generations of what to look for in their cattle. And, but even so, I think it is a very valuable thing to have the judging background. And so I really appreciate you guys coming to give your insights and opinions on it. And I'm actually really looking forward to that class. So, because I did not grow up in the beef industry. And so everything at this college is super ideal and will help, I think, anybody's future career that goes here, because you said it's so hands-on, and I would totally agree with that. So I think that is all I have for this episode, but thank you ladies for joining us.
Thank you for having us. We appreciate the opportunity to speak on, the judging behalf, and then for me to get to talk about the classes that I get to teach and have the opportunity to be here and share my knowledge with the students. Mm-hmm. It's a pretty incredible opportunity.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Keaton.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that is it for this episode of Heard It Here. I'm Kaylee Mason, and we will see you next time.